Good morning. And thank you all for joining us this early for the special Board of Directors meeting, Thursday, July 11th, 2024. It's about 8:28 a.m. I'm going to begin. By the way, this is a special board meeting, so we really do have only one agenda item. I'm going to begin by taking the roll. Pika Bukowski,
Present.
Anthony Alto,
Present.
Don Takeuchi Apuna is excused. Michelle Chan Bungrauer.
Here.
Natalie Iwasa is also excused. Roger Morton.
Present.
Joe O'Donnell is excused. Edwin Sniffen is excused. Art Tolentino is excused. Robert Yu.
Here.
And the chair is also here. Before we begin, on the agenda, let me call for any public testimony. I'm sorry, I'm virtual this morning, so I can't see the room. I assume there's no one to testify. Is that correct?
No testifiers, Chair, either online or in writing, or I don't believe in the room.
Okay. So having heard all of that, we'll now go to the agenda item number 3, which is the establishment of a permitted interaction group to investigate the executive director and CEO's employment agreement. Even if we just called for testimony, I'll call for it again. Anyone there to testify? Welcome, Art Tolentino. No one? So we'll begin with the agenda item number 3, and the record will note the presence of Art Tolentino as well. Now we'll, this is really a creation of a permitted interaction group. Now, do we need, or does anyone feel a need to go into executive session on this item? This is something that I think we've talked about in public as well as in executive session many times. Anyone feel a need?
No.
I don't see anything from any of the board members. So, members, what we are contemplating here is the creation of a PIG to really do the employment agreement with with Lori Kayakina. So what we're talking about is the creation of a permitted interaction group to investigate the executive director and CEO's employment agreement. Is there any discussion among the board members?
Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, so.
Yes, Keith.
Thank you, Chair. Just for, I guess, for my clarification, if you could kind of explain, because I thought in the last board meeting, we had a lot of discussion regarding the process that we were going to utilize moving forward with the negotiations for the contract. And I thought we had settled on HR committee. So I'm just kind of wondering if you could kind of explain why we're contemplating a PIG at this point.
I will, but before I do that, Dan, can I explain the request of Lori in open session, or do I need to call an executive session on that?
No, I think you can discuss in general terms, Chair. I can also go through with the Vice Chair if that would be helpful.
Okay, this really is a request that we're trying to satisfy. Dan, would you like to continue?
Sure. So we had discussions with Lori's attorney, and we also had interactions with the Office of Information Practices. And basically our options were we either have the discussions completely in open session under sunshine law. The only way that it wouldn't be an open session would be through a PIG. And obviously the board is committed to transparency and openness, but I also know that there was a concern just with logistics and being able to have sort of a back and forth discussion in that way. And so we're able to accommodate Lori's desire to have a more private session and also just the efficiency of getting the job done.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions, Kika?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, so that is the reason why we're formulating the pig. As you know, that was actually something that I thought we should have done in the last session, but now that we've got all our ducks in order, so to speak, this is the way we are proceeding. So with that, the chair's prerogative, of course, is the establishment of the pig. And in light of what we did discuss in the last meeting, I am gonna create the pig with the members of the HR committee who are Michelle as the chair and also the chair of the pig. Vice chair is Anthony Alto, and members are actually Roger Morton and Art Tolentino. Because we can have up to 5 members of the pig, I'm offering, I don't know if offering is the right word, but I would like to put you on, Kika, as the 5th member. Unless you're adverse to that, then the person to your right would be my next choice as to the 5th person, because we can have 5. But the first thing is the HR committee is comprised of the 4 members, and so with that, do you have any inclination one way or the other?
Yeah, Chair, I'd like to serve on the pig. Thank you.
Because yes, I know that you were interested in having this, having us do this discussion in the full board because you wanted to participate in that. But I think in one of our discussions in open session, Lori made it clear that it was too unruly and rightfully so for us to do it that way. So with that, and of course, that would also have to be open because of the waiver of her confidentiality. Am I correct in that, Dan?
Yes, essentially, Chair. And I just as a friendly reminder, we will need to define the scope of the pig before the vote.
Okay. And so the pig scope is to investigate the executive director and CEO's employment agreement. And by that, it is going to be the duty of the pig to negotiate the terms of the contract with Laurie and her attorney, who is, I think, Mr. Cox. And the members of the pig will be in charge of that. It is anticipated, I believe, that this would be a multi-year contract with terms meaning benchmarks or whatever all of you on the pig agree to, as well as with Laurie's attorney. And we're hoping that we'll be able to get to some agreement very shortly. I think Laurie had asked by the end of August, which is next month. And that is why we had to move this special meeting, because there was no way I think we could comply with that if we waited for the regularly scheduled meeting. Dan, is that enough of a scope description?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Michelle, I hate to put this back on you, but you will be chairing the pig. I found that unless I designate a chair, somehow the pigs kind of fall through the cracks. So you are the HR committee chair, and the initial intent of the board was to put this in the HR committee. So I'm just following suit and accommodating Kika's request, because I know Kika was very concerned about not being able to participate in the negotiations. So any questions, members? Any comments?
Thank you.
If not, is that somebody?
Yes, I just said thank you, Chair.
Oh, it's very unusual for you, Roger, not to speak directly in the mic, but then it could be because I'm virtual. Now, with that, may I have a motion to that effect?
Chair, I so move.
A second? Okay, we've moved and seconded. Any further discussion, members? If not, we have unanimous consent among those of us who are here. So the motion carries, so the PIG is created as designated by the chair, with the scope also as stated earlier. So with that, members, there is nothing further on this. I don't believe I need to call for public testimony because I've called for public testimony basically 2 times already on this agenda item. So with that, members, we will be adjourned and I will turn this over. It's Robert, your meeting,
Yes, Chair.
correct?
Yes.
We're not bad, members. It's 8:38. So you guys decide. I am leaving. And maybe see you later, depending on what the needs are for a quorum on the other committees. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair? She's gone, right? I was gonna.
Dan, could I just move into the Finance Committee meeting? Thank you, Chad. The time is 8:40, and I'm going to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Today is Thursday, July 11th, and is at 8:40 a.m. I'm going to start by calling roll. Kika Pukowski,
Present.
Michelle Chun,
Present.
J. Roger Morton,
Present.
Arthur Tolentino,
Present.
and I am Robert Yu, the chair. Thank you. Before we go on the presentation, are there any public testimonies? Okay, none, Chair. Thank you. So the third item, cash flow report and financial update. Richard,
Good morning,
please.
everyone. Richard Oshiro, Deputy Director of Budget and Finance. I will just run through, same as always. Top line, come right down to the bottom of any expenses that were significant for the month. So I guess the first thing is an update to the May actual as well as June actual. So I did have some time to put this together, even though it was a very short period to produce this report, given the holiday last week. The May GET of 44.9 million, that was all GET. Last month I actually showed it as a split because last year it was a split. So I trued the number up. So you see now in May actual, just shy of 45 million was all GET. And then thankfully during the last week of June, I believe it went for good value on June 24th or 25th. The remainder of the funds that were due us from last year. And that was thankfully given because the emergency appropriation was passed. So $43.4 million from last year credited in June. And for the TAT, 21.4 million was also credited in June. And what that will do is it will alleviate the fact that we will be eating into FY25 allotments. So as far as we can tell, it is slightly short. I mean, when I say short, we're talking like 96 cents short from last year's report. So effectively, FY24 is good with regard to cash flow received for GET and TAT. Moving down the line, $2.5 billion was due from interest income as well as lease income revenue. The only other items that are large, and this is done at the request of Robert, I did go ahead and split up CCR into its component parts. That exercise was a little bit more arduous than I had planned because I needed to actually rerun every single period with the cash activity reports to isolate each contract. So that's good through June. I also have to go backwards just to make sure that all the activity is good. So once that happens, I will report that and also true up FY24. I'm just going to go down the list here. Other things that were of significance. CE&I posted to budget. I think the only other thing that was expected but not budgeted per se, if you go to the second page and you go down to Part 201, which is the operating budget you see that we had 678,000 projected for the month. It actually came in significantly higher than that, and that is due to the fact that we got a whole bunch of overhead charges posted in June that should have either come in May or just were cleanups for the year. Everything else is okay. Bond repayment was projected to budget, and the GO bond interest is slightly higher than what we would have normally seen every month, and that's only due to the fact that we received a TECP expense to round out FY24. Other than that, everything else is steady state. Any budget items that did not get posted for June, I did move them into the following fiscal year, which is now. And then also, I'm sounding like a broken record, sadly, but I'll say it for the record, that once the CCGS contract is awarded, I will go through all the support services contracts with Corey, and then we'll go and re-baseline, every single support contract. So dollars will potentially be moved between CPPs and I into another contract. So I think that's it, unless anyone else has any questions with regard to the monthly.
Thank you, Richard.
Of course.
I'm not a member, but if I may, we don't see any monthlies for the TAT, either the At One or the county TAT. I'm just wondering
Oh, the Oahu,
on the revenues, yeah.
yeah, Oahu TAT comes in once a quarter.
Okay.
That money, since we're talking about it, so the bond pricing that finances that cash, the OTAT, I'm sorry, OTAT comes in every quarter. What I was going to mention is that the city's subsidy, right, the skin in the
the
game, so to
subsidy,
speak,
yeah.
that everyone calls, that pricing was done a couple of days ago. Once
Okay.
that bond issuance drops, then the city will have funds to transfer over to Hart. And then just for the record, normally that is programmed in the cash flow at the end of the period.
Got it.
So they'll,
But you anticipated my next question with that one. Thanks.
Just to clarify, TET only comes in quarterly for both state and city.
Yes.
Okay.
Got it.
Members, any other? Oh, thanks, Anthony. I apologize. I didn't recognize you when I was doing roll.
I changed my hairstyle.
Members, any other questions? Okay, if there are none, I have a few. And Richard, thank you for adding a line for the city center utility location, the electrical. Is there a CCUR3 electrical? I know you have CCUR4 electrical.
yeah, I have 3 in there. It's actually
It's just 3 downtown.
the last one. Yeah,
Electrical is part of 3.
yes.
It's not a separate contract like 4E.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
With respect, I'm on the, the monthly
Yes.
cash flow. So your projection for city center utility relocation for June is 23.3 million. Do you have any explanation why the expenditure is only 9.6? I'm looking at,
Sure, I see what you're looking at. So there could be 2 things going on there. One is the level of effort is low. That is a question that you can pose to Corey, guys. I think the other thing, which is more prevalent every single month, is that even though a level of effort may be reported by Corey and Ben's folks, the actual bill payment happens a month or 2 later. So basically, that's a lag. That will post into July, and/or because the forecast is driven by the EAC, every single month there's contingency baked into that forecast. So in the case of, I'll just use downtown. In the case of downtown, we know that there's going to be credits and/or a change order that will come in to lower the amount of the contract. That is not reflected in here. So for downtown at least, you'll see that this forecast is basically hot relative to what actual will be. If that's the line of questioning, because it is low for this June. Any bills that are going to come in for the next quarter either is reflected in here, or because, like I said, I had only 2 days to put this thing together versus June, so it may not even had a chance to be posted into the actual, the trips routing. But that will be updated for August, if in fact it settles in June, or July rather.
Okay. I'll buy that for now.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's almost no other explanation for it. We'll true it up. I mean, Corey and I have had conversations about this. It's
Yeah.
always, it looks like we're not hitting the forecast, when reality is that we won't spend the extra burn, so to speak, because that's contingency, and it also doesn't include the credit that's going to come with the potential change order.
Okay.
Either we move it to the back, like we did with the unallocated contingency.
Yeah,
Just push it to the
Richard,
right, so to
I'm not so much concerned whether you hit forecast or you don't hit forecast. I'm more, concerned about if you do or if you don't, as long as there's an explanation for it. And I understand not paying bills on time is always the explanation. But at some point, it seems like there might be other explanation that could explain it, right? And I understand the contingency part and whatnot. But anyway, in future statements, after you prepare it, if you could kind of just go through and, because you guys are the expert, you would be able to go through the statement and say, hey, look, this looks kind of unusual. Let's find out what's going on. Instead of just putting the number and sending it out. I'm more interested in the explanation, more so than whether you get all your numbers in on time. Yeah, thank you.
Understood. That makes sense. Thank you. Thank you for those suggestions.
And I think you mentioned this during your presentation for HRT 200 and HRT 201.
Yes.
The June actual is a lot different than the projected. So, for example, for salary, salary at 768,000 in June is substantially higher than April and May. And other months, is there a reason?
Yeah, so the any direct charges posted to payroll, and then specifically with regard to 201, there were some charges for lease rent that were a little bit late. Yeah, okay, 200 would be any direct charges and or things like, I'm just trying to think what exactly it was. I know there was some
Charges
things that
go
were
to
in
salaries and
arrears. No,
wages?
It has to do with the benefits charges.
And it's charged to 201 salaries and wages, not.
200. To 201, 201 gets hit with the direct charges and with case.
Oh, no, I'm asking about 200, HRT 200. It seems like
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
what it
two.
was. It was a retirement and post-employment benefit charge that got posted in June. We do. No, that comes in quarterly. That particular one comes in quarterly. So that's why it's a little bit higher than normal, Robert.
$250,000.
Yeah, it can be.
Okay. It's just that when I look at your other forecasts, going forward,
Yeah.
you don't show that
Correct.
as an exception
Yeah, that's
to.
because that's true. And if you look at the actual forecast per se,
Yeah, it's
I believe it's just a
consistent
burn
at
rate.
792.
Correct.
So, yeah, going back to, just putting the numbers in, I think the forecast should reflect what you think the reality would be, not just whatever the budget is divided by 12. I mean, that's kind of easy to do, right? Yeah, so, and if you have lump sum payments at the end of the fiscal year, then maybe throughout the months in the fiscal year, you could reflect what your forecast is, including at the end of the year, a big lump sum payment. So it makes it a little bit more comparable, right? And also reliable when we're looking at this stuff.
Sure.
And same questions to HRT 201. It's 1.2 million higher than your forecast. What makes up that $1.2 million?
That's also a year-end type quarterly stuff, so.
Yeah.
direct
What
charges.
kind of things are we talking
So that would
about?
have been case charges, any other direct charges that are from the city. And then I think in this particular case, we were in arrears for a lease payment for this space. So basically, that's $2 $250,000 payments showing up in June.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then,
So once again, that could have been updated to reflect that, but I didn't do that. That was my bad.
okay, no, that's fine. Okay, so the difference is about 1.2. And I'm not gonna continue harping on this. So you have $250,000 payment that comes out to 500,000, 700,000 that has not been explained is still a pretty significant amount, right, compared to what your forecast is. So anyway, again, next time, after all the numbers are put in, if there's anything unusual, just make sure we have some kind of explanation for it. So thank you. Let's move on to the annual cash flow. And I'm going to just focus on the city center utilities because that's the biggest contract. There's other contracts, but the amount for this contract is substantially greater than all the others, right? So if I'm looking at your projected revenue and expense total, fiscal year 2023 to fiscal year 2031 is toward the right-hand side. I'm going to try to read what the heck I wrote here.
Okay, go ahead. Are you looking at monthly or annual?
The annual one.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
if I add the annual projected expenditures, so comparing it to the POC report or the monthly report that you issue a couple weeks ago, it seems like there's major differences between what's in there, what's in the monthly progress report compared to what you present here. So for example, the monthly progress report for CCUR 3 downtown, you show a projected expenditure of $152.2 million in your monthly progress report for May. But in your cash flow, you're projecting $214.8 million. So, again, when those numbers come out, just as long, unless you know what the explanation
I
is.
can explain that one. What you're seeing on the forecast on the monthly progress report is what we expect our contract completion to be. The 214 includes their contingency, so that's the EAC. So there's about a $55 million or so contingency still remaining.
Okay.
That's not in our forecast, it's projected to spend. And that's for all of the contracts. The forecast, progress report is not short.
Okay. Hang on one second. So, but the current contract value in the monthly progress report is $239.1 million.
That's correct. And then we have a credit projected, and that's what's bringing that EAC down to the 152, or I think it's 152, 155, whatever it is. So that's how that's calculated. The forecast is including all the contingencies, so it does take that 152, but we're keeping that allocated contingency because we are not moving that around until that contract is filed.
Okay. We could talk about that a little later.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So is it the same explanation for CCUR 4 Dillingham, where what's in your report is $481 million and what's here is $551 million?
Yes, that's the same explanation.
Okay, and the contract value in your report is $496 million.
So the 481 is 496 less, and I believe there's $15 million or so of potential changes. So that's how you get to the 481. So that's our projected contract at completion. That 481 plus the remaining allocated contingency is how we're getting to the five. I don't know the number. Five. Yeah.
Okay, so what you're saying is you're projecting CCUR 4 Dillingham to finish at $551.8 million instead of what's reflected in the monthly progress report.
Yes. Well, I don't think we want to highlight what our contingencies are on our contracts.
Well, I'm not highlighting it. It is public document.
Yeah.
I'm just reading all these things as a public document. There's nothing confidential documents that I'm reading off from. Okay. So let's move on to the contract. Current contract value is $808 million, right? And it doesn't have a breakdown on which component it is. Yeah, okay, thank you. So, and if I add all the projected expenditures, is $868.5 million. So, just looking at this, so what we're saying is potentially what you're projecting to spend on these contracts could potentially be more than what the contract value is as of today.
Yes, that's what our contingency is reserved for. So we have changes that's above the contract.
Okay. Okay, all right, thanks. Members, any other questions? Okay, yeah, just to reiterate, when you put all these numbers down, for our next committee meeting, just make sure to take a look at it and see whether it looks weird or not, and also how it ties into the monthly, progress report. I kind of buy into your explanation, but because all the numbers are different, it would be easier if there's, at some point, it may be easier to have some kind of reconciliation why the numbers on the monthly progress report, which also takes into contingencies, are different than the numbers in the cash flow report. And I think it's particularly important if we ever go for additional funding for this project, that the numbers are reliable and, could be translated between reports, right? Okay, thanks.
I had a quick, more, not really a question, well, I guess it could be a question or a comment, but, if I recall, in the past, at least the annual financial plan used to be included in the monthly report. And I notice now that it's not included. For me, I asked for it to be included in the monthly progress report so that it would be easier to kind of flip back and forth to make sure that I'm looking at the most current report versus me trying to find, I may be looking at something that's outdated. I don't know if that's too much to ask, but if at all.
Annual cash flow, you just want this included in the monthly report?
At the time, the most current one, because it does help me.
So we just need to make sure, so the monthly report is lagging.
Yeah,
Like this is going to be more current, what we're presenting to you folks, so.
right.
We can, but we just want to make sure everything in the monthly report, let's say for the May one, the cutoff was, is it April 30th, or it was May 31st? So the cash flow that's going to be put in here, the cutoff is going to be May 31st, but you folks in the board meeting, you're getting June. So we just want to make sure it's consistent.
Yeah, and I guess that's the reason I'm asking, because I kind of to dovetail off of what Robert's asking. I mean, I'm thinking that there could be some disparities in the numbers because of that lag, and like Robert, I mean, I just want to kind of understand why, and for me at least, and the POC and the especially the financial plan, it kind of goes together, yeah. So in the past, and if it's not too much trouble, I mean, I would appreciate including the most current financial plan, so that if there are questions, at least we could flush them out and understand. And like Robert said, if there's a reason, we just need to understand why. And if it is the lag or some other reason, we just want to understand why. Yeah, if can. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Kika. Well, asked this at the POC meeting, when we're looking at the monthly report, but since Kika asked the question, that would be very good for the POC committee to have. But one thing we have to keep in mind is that the monthly report, in the back of the monthly report where you show all the expenditures, those are incurred expenditures. Those are not expenditures it may not be all the expenditures you have paid for. And that's the reason why I, asked the question. And when you mentioned that, Richard, when you mentioned that, well, we haven't been paying, right? But it still should tie in somewhat to the monthly progress report, because that doesn't show payment. That just show what you have already spent, not necessarily pay. So, on a monthly basis, I try to connect those two numbers, not as well as you guys, but I try to. And there's still some discrepancies. I'm sure you could explain those, but if you're going to include that report in the monthly progress report, then you should be prepared to explain how the cash
delta
numbers
between the two.
tie into the incurred numbers. Okay, thank you.
That last statement you just made.
So this is, okay. So this is on a cash basis. So it doesn't matter whether money is spent or on a project or not. This just shows the payment. So for example, if they don't pay a contractor, I don't know, let's just say for 6 months, right? It would show 0 in the cash flow report. But in the monthly progress report, in that financial statement, it should show the exact amount that you already spent but have not paid for.
So incurred versus paid.
Yes. And when we look at those two, we just got to keep that in mind. And the incurred should be generally higher than
correct.
what's paid, unless you guys prepay a whole bunch of stuff.
Just add to that, and that's a great point you bring up, Robert, comparing those two. Our incurred is like an accrual basis, so they could, contractors can submit pay requests that we haven't paid, but we're counting it as an incurred cost for
Yes.
that period. So your incurred should be higher than our actuals, which is
Yeah,
what you
it
would
should
see.
always be, unless
Yeah.
you prepay a lot of stuff,
and we don't
right?
prepay.
Yeah,
That's not a
yeah.
good practice.
Yeah, so looking at those two numbers should give you a pretty good idea of what's going on with the schedule of the project. Yeah, because no one's going to do work if they're not getting paid for, right? Any other questions from members? Anthony?
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure if this is really the purview of this committee, but I'm not sure where else to find a number that I think the public would find very interesting, which is what this is actually costing the average resident. I mean, when I do my back of the envelope numbers, I come up with about $4 a week per resident on this island. And I don't think that's the public perception. I think they perceive us as spending a lot more money than that. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to work out that I mean, I should say that, by the way, when I make that calculation, I take out about 25% of the GET because that's being paid by visitors. But $4 a week per resident seems to me a fairly reasonable number, and I don't think the public are aware of it. I mean, I'm wondering if that's an exercise that you could go through. No? Okay.
I don't know. I guess you could just do a back of the envelope calculation.
Maybe I should just throw my number out there. I think
Not $10 billion divided by 1 million people, right? That kind of tells you.
23 years. It's not the headline number that most residents have in their head is vastly more than that.
It is. I've seen it in the news. It's higher.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not biting on this. Any other questions, members? Any testimony from the public here online? I guess not, right? Okay. Thanks, Cindy. Okay, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you for your
Appreciate it.
comments. Appreciate it. Wait, you next.
Good morning. Today is Thursday, July 11th. This is the Project Oversight Committee meeting, and I'm calling this meeting to order at 9:20. First on the agenda is roll call. Myself present, Vice Chair Michelle Chun Brudengraber,
Here.
Anthony Alto,
Present.
Ed Sniffen is excused, Art Tolentino,
Present.
and Robert Yu.
Here, Chair.
And also present, we have Roger Morton, and that's it. Is there any public testimony on any of the agenda items? Anybody in the public, anybody online?
No testimony, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 3, May Project Management Oversight Report. Matt, you're gonna be, or Corey?
Both of us, we're gonna tag team. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Directors, Matt Scanlon, Deputy Project Director. Chad, if you could pull up we'll give you the executive summary of the PMOC monthly report. This is the report for May that covers the performance period for April from the 1st through the 30th.
For those, I guess, viewing, we're just trying to pull up the report, I'm assuming.
Yeah, just trying to pull up the executive summary. Okay, there we go. So not a lot of changes in the report. The same two major issues were flagged for this May report, the management capacity and capability. I know there's been a lot of discussion on this. And then on the next page, the city center status of the procurement and the overall CCUR construction progress. Knowing that there's been a lot of discussion on these, I really would like to just open it up to you guys about what questions you might have of us that we can answer on the report in general.
Members, any questions?
I have a question
Go
real
ahead,
quick.
Robert.
Let's go to CCUR, the utilities. It says right here on the PMOC report, it says NAN submitted a schedule with an expected delay. Do you know how long, what they submitted and the delay timeframe?
Corey, correct me, but I feel like it was about a 2 to 3 month potential delay that we're still working through with them, going through the schedule. But I'm gonna let Corey speak before I.
Yeah, so the data here is from April at the time. They submitted a schedule regarding the covert conflict at Waikimilo, and that did have a push on their schedule for about 2 months. I think we reported it at a time as a deduction on our schedule contingency. So this is kind of lagging, but this is from that issue.
So there's no delay, that's resolved?
It's being resolved, yes.
Okay.
It's being resolved.
Okay, let's just assume if it doesn't get resolved, does it have any impact on CCGS?
No, we're not seeing that at the time. We still believe access by February 2026 is still
Okay.
on track.
I guess this is just a general question. Just based on what you just told us, it seems like it's no big deal, right?
No, it's definitely it's a deal, and that's the team is working hard.
Okay,
to
well,
address it, but
it's a deal, but I don't know how they classify it's a major issue. Just by your explanation, it doesn't seem that major. It seems like, okay, just a little hiccup, but yeah.
I guess I would say
Yeah, I don't think you could answer that. I'm just wondering, yeah, it seems like to them it's a major issue, but to us, it just seems like, well, it's not really anything major. We'll work it out,
I don't
right?
want to have that impression. I mean, we've been pretty transparent that our critical path goes through Dillingham in getting access to CCGS. So yes, a delay on that contract is important. We want to acknowledge it. We don't see that pushing out or impacting CCGS right now, but it's something that the team is working on, and we think we have solutions, and we're going to work through it. So.
Thanks. Thanks, Jim.
No problem. Any other questions, members? Yeah, Art?
And I think we talked about it before on scheduling. If they finish early, there was an incentive. Is there a liquidated damage? And I thought there were per day, and it was a large amount. What was that amount?
Yeah, we don't get back to you. I don't remember off the top of my head what's in that
Yeah,
contract.
it's a really large amount per day, and we're talking 2 months of a delay, which would be multiplied by that large amount toward the contractor.
So not yet. I mean,
Yeah,
so the
but
two-
you're trying to work that out.
Yes.
But they're telling you that they're projecting a delay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Roger.
I know that CCGS proposals are due within a couple of weeks, I think. Can you just and I know there's a lot of procurement law that that you can't talk about many aspects of it, but can you run through what the expected timeline is and whether it's changed, and what we can expect to have the evaluation completed and what you're projecting a contract award and notice to proceed?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, the proposals are due on July 23rd, so coming up here in the next 2 weeks. The intent or notice to award is scheduled by the end of August, and then notice to proceed in September. So that's the current procurement schedule, and we're pretty confident we're going to still hit that.
Good, thank you.
Members, any other questions? So, Corey, it feels like we were just here not too long ago talking, reviewing the monthly progress report and the PMOC reports. I think we had 3 on the last agenda. This one we had, but just wasn't quite ready to present at the time. And kind of to follow up on Robert's question regarding CCUR 4. I thought we had we talked about this in the last PMOC, and I thought it came up on the monthly report. So if I'm hearing what you're telling Robert, NAN has come up with a plan to address whatever delays were experienced, and I recall it had to do with some of the infrastructure work, but was there a plan that was developed and you guys are working through that?
Yeah, they had to have a custom box cast that has already been produced, and they're installing it right now. So we're really just down to the details of tying it in. And so, agreed, when they ran into this issue, it did appear at the time, it was a hurdle the team had to work through. So rightfully so, they flagged it as a potential delay, not knowing what it would take to resolve. But at this point, the team continues to solve issues and move forward, and that issue is definitely not quite totally behind us, but they're finalizing it right now.
Yeah, and I guess, I think, I'm speaking for myself, the reports are delayed. This is the May report, and we're in July, so I know a lot has transpired since this report was written, so what's happening today may not be necessarily reflected in this report, but it could be reflected in the monthly report, because as I understand it, the monthly report informs the PMOC report. So I guess, we're trying to reference back and forth between various reports that come out at various times versus what's actually happening today. So I appreciate the explanation. Is there anything else besides what's here that you folks feel the need to share? I know that there's been some discussion about the management capacity and capability. Notwithstanding what's provided here, has there been any further concern that has been expressed by the PMOC? Or again, this is May and we're in July. Is there any additional information that we need to, where we should be talking about as far as management capacity and capability that we can share at this point in time?
I'm trying to recall that meeting, Kika. I think the main ones that they were concerned about was my contract and, of course, Rick possibly retiring at the end of this year. And so that's why in the report it does state that second deputy, which I discussed at the last meeting. Really difficult to bring in somebody when you don't know the stability of the leadership, because the next CEO could come in and terminate you to bring in his team members. So I think they'll back off on that second deputy once they feel that there's going to be some stability in the leadership. That's what I recall. You guys remember anything else from that NCC?
Okay. All right. Members, any other questions? Michelle? I see someone online. Do we have anyone that wishes to testify on this item? No? Okay. All right. If there's no other questions, we can move on to the next agenda item number 4A, CCUR 4 change order. Matt?
Okay, again, thank you, directors. If we can get to the PowerPoint for this one. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll be requesting the board's approval to transfer scope from CCUR 4 contract to the CCUR 4E contract. It'll be a credit amount in the amount of approximately $9,179,000. The scope to be transferred includes wood poles, steel poles, and 138 kV pole foundations and poles. Building reconnects will also be de-scoped from this contract. Quick background on this contract. NAN Inc. was awarded this contract on 8/16 of 2022 for approximately $496 million. One change order has been issued to date for a total cost of $500,000. Current contract value there you see $496,746,000. Substantial completion on this is December 8th of 2025. So background on this, the reasoning for this change. The 4E drawings were issued after 4 had been awarded and include additional scope of work that impacts the 4 contract. We believe it'll be beneficial to transfer that relevant high voltage electrical work in the base scope and additional work to the 4E contractor instead of adding the scope to the 4 contract. The increased long lead material procurement durations delay the building reconnects and have already been included in the 4E bid price and will be de-scoped from 4. This additional scope is discussed in the corresponding 4E transfer of scope change order. So just to show you the negotiation summary, because this is a unit price contract, this was actually a pretty easy negotiation. It was a 1-for-1 deduct of what we were taking from the 4 contract and what we were going to put into the 4E contract. So there you can just see the furnish and install poles. You can see the contract amount where there was some work installed and some part furnished material stuff that was taken out there as a credit. But other than that, below you see it's a 1-for-1 deduct and credit totaling up to the approximately $9 million. So the benefits to Hart, transferring this scope, having one contractor perform all the 138 kV foundations and poles, improves coordination with HECO most importantly, and reduces potential conflicts of 2 contractors working on the road together. So the requested action, again, we're going to be requesting the board's approval to transfer the amount of $9,179,000 and also to move that credit amount to the allocated contingency for the CCOR 4E contract. So with that, I'll pause and take questions.
Members, any questions? Yes, Roger.
There must be a corresponding increase in scope for the CCOR 4E contract. Do you have an estimate of what the change order would be for the E contract?
Yep, we're covering it right after this, and it's
I'll wait.
But it is right after this. It's a $20 million add to the 4E contract. So I figured we'll set the stage and just talk through the reasoning for where we were at in design and contracts and why the scope add is going from one to the other.
Okay, members, any other questions? No questions? So Matt, so basically this is a de-scope of CCUR 4?
Correct.
Okay, and then you're transferring the funds to the allocated for 4E?
Correct.
Okay. So this requires action. What would be the, can you restate what action you guys are requiring?
We're asking approval to change this contract and authorize this credit, this de-scope amount in approximately $9 million, and then also allowing us to take that money and allocate it to the CCUR 4E contract in the allocated contingency bucket.
Okay. Members, any other questions? Can I get a motion?
I move, Chair.
Okay,
I second.
okay, thank you. There's been moved and seconded. Are there any further discussion? Anyone dissent? Any
Chair,
of-
just to clarify, this motion is for both the 9 million and the 20. I know it's been talked about.
So
Okay,
this-
it's just for the 9
The
million
first
credit.
action is just the $9
Got it.
million
Yeah.
credit.
Okay,
And then
we're
the next
not, like,
presentation will
combining the
be
two
asking the
motions.
approval for
Got
the
it,
next
got it.
add.
Yeah, so just let me clarify. So the motion, as I understand it, is the de-scope of $9.1 million from CCUR 4 and to reallocate it to the contingency for CCUR 4E. That's all we're doing on this agenda item.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay. Okay, if there's no objection, the motion passes. Okay, move on to the next item. Item 4B, CCUR 4E, transfer of scope from CCUR 4 to CCUR 4E. Matt?
Thank you, Chair. Okay,
Oh, excuse me. Before I go further, is there anyone in the audience or online that would like to testify on this agenda item? Seeing none, Matt?
thank you, Chair. Okay, purpose of this request. Hart is requesting the board's approval to add and transfer scope from the CCUR 4 contract to the CCUR 4E contract in the amount of $20.3 million. The scope to be transferred includes wood poles and attachments, steel poles, 138 kV pole foundations, including temporary and permanent steel casings, and an additional field change notice allowance funds. Change is being presented in two parts. We already got approval. The first change order, CCO01, was a provisional sum for the long lead items, has already been executed. That was $5 million for materials for the 138 kV rebar cages and the permanent steel casings. This change order covers the remaining scope of work. So some quick background on this contract. This is the 4E electrical contract. This was awarded to HMS Construction in December of 23. The contract amount was $72 million. There's been one change order issued to date. That was the one we just spoke about for $5 million to get the long lead items coming, and then that puts the current contract value at $77.1 million. Their substantial completion is February of 26. So the background on this, again, similar to the last one, was the CCOR 4E drawings were issued after 4 had been awarded and included additional scope of work impacting the 4 contract. We deemed it beneficial to actually put all of this scope into the 4E electrical contract. The transferred steel pole scope hasn't changed, but the additional wood poles have been identified, as well as mounting equipment and anchors for the HECO poles. The 138 kV pole foundations were included in the 4 design and revised based on pole calculations in the 4E design. Based on that revised design, permanent steel casings will need to be added to the foundations. Additionally, we're looking for an FCN allowance funding to replenish funds already allocated for unforeseen work and related to this additional scope being transferred. We've used 56% of the current FCN allowance, and that's already been allocated for work. So the next page kind of shows you the buildup of this. The largest cost there was really, and again, this was due to the nature of the electrical design that was with HECO was not finished at the time. And once that design was completed, the price for the 138 kV pole foundations and poles, that's the $15 million driver. That was because of the deeper foundations that require more rebar cage. And the most significant portion is that permanent and temporary steel casing. That drives construction costs because you need additional equipment, oscillator tables. It's much more expensive to construct with those casings. So just showing you the cost buildup of where these additional costs came from, totaling the $20 million. And again, once we had all of this information, it seemed very beneficial to Hart to transfer all of this scope to the electrical contractor in the 4E contract. They'll now be doing all of the 138 kV from the foundation through the poles and all of the wiring, cabling, and cutovers. So the requested action on this right now, we're asking for the board to approve the change order amount of $20.3 million to the 4E electrical contract. The scope of work will be funded from the allocated contingency. And so I'll pause there and take questions.
Members, questions? Yep, Robert?
So in the previous resolution, it was a de-scope of $9 million from CCUR 4, right? And this is a change order for $20 million for CCUR 4 electrical. And the de-scoping of the $9 million is due to transferring the work to CCUR 4E. Why wouldn't it be even Stevens, like $9 million? Why would it be $11 million more?
Totally understand. So going back and painting the picture of where we were at when we put out both the CCUR 3 and the CCUR 4 infrastructure contracts. At that time, HECO was still finishing the electrical design, and based on the schedules of where we were at, it was determined that it would be worth going forward and putting out the 3 and the 4 contracts to get the infrastructure work going while the electrical design was still being finalized. So the scope that was in 4 was a best guess at where, thinking about infrastructure, people took it all the way to the pole. Like, let's have everything, including the poles, in the 4 contract, and then while all of the cabling and electrical design is being finalized, we'll finish that and put that out in an E contract. The finalization of that design added things that weren't foreseeable at the time that we put the 4 contract out. There was additional attachments, additional anchors. Some of the wood poles are actually to do temporary overhead shoe fly of a circuit while we put in the 138 kV underground. So really it was just the nature of finalizing the HECO design and the overall electrical design this scope grew from where it was when we put out the 4 contract.
Okay, got it. It just preliminary compared to final. Thanks.
Members, any other questions? Go ahead, Roger.
On the previous slide, when you showed the 5 million for the long lead items, those items were contemplated when the contract was put together. I know, and I think the board took previous action on that anyway. But can you just refresh my memory as to why I mean, I understand the need for the long lead time and the pre-ordering and getting the materials here, but can you refresh my memory as to why that was a change order and wasn't contemplated in the original contract?
Again, really the foundation change you can see is what's driving this entire thing. And so at the time, when we put the original contract out, all we had in the electrical design at that point was sort of a need for a pole, but the pole was still sort of bare. They hadn't got to the point of calculating all of the attachments, the anchors and everything. That combined with the geotechnical conditions, all of that additional loading, the geotechnical conditions, actually that's what triggered, oh, we need to actually permanent case these holes to support these loads. So we went from a very simple open hole construction to an oscillated permanent or temporary cased hole construction, much more expensive. And when we realized we needed to get that casing, that's why we came while we were finalists, like we need to get this casing ordered to hold schedule. That's why we came to you guys and said we need to get this provisional sum in place to get the deeper rebar cages and more specifically the casings ordered and en route so that we can hold construction schedule.
So pretty much the same as Robert. It was a preliminary design versus detailed design and the things that you discovered as you went forward.
Correct.
Yeah.
Members, any other questions? Yeah, so Matt, I know we had this discussion a day or so ago, but you know, I understand the rationale of what you're explaining, pre-final design versus final design, and the changes in the foundation, the requirements. But I mean, I guess, you know, I mean, there were some assumptions, I guess, that could have been made at the time that the original CCUR 4 contract went out. If you're looking at a bare pole, we pretty much know that it's not going to end up being a bare pole, that there is going to be some load, there is going to be some equipment attached to the pole. I mean, that could have maybe reduced the disparity. I guess if you can, and I know we're kind of looking back a little distance, but at the time that there wasn't any contemplating some of those, you know, obvious additions to the pole, which could have maybe brought this disparity down a bit and maybe provided us with a little bit more firm numbers versus such a considerable addition in change orders, relevant to assumptions that we could have made back then, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Totally agree. Fair questioning, and I know our director of quality is always pushing us on what sort of lessons learned can we take forward to avoid and be better prepared. I would say the lesson learned from this, I agree with the decision to go forward with the 4 contract because we got a lot of infrastructure done while we were finalizing that electrical design. The lesson learned would be, though, that when we're going to do something like that, we should have been more conservative in our estimates, knowing that the design wasn't complete. So no different than looking at, you know, risk and risk mitigation. You know, what was the risk of going forward with that? What could have been done? I think people probably could have looked and said, well, the worst case scenario would be having to permanently case those holes, and we maybe should have made that assumption as far as an engineering estimate at that time.
Right. So, I mean, I guess, well, yeah, okay. I appreciate that explanation, because this is a kind of an eye opener, right? And when we're descoping and there's a $11 million disparity between the two. So, yeah. Okay.
No question.
Yep. Go ahead, Roger.
And we're funding this through allocated contingency, right? Where does that leave our allocated contingency after?
Comfortable?
Yeah, is it
Positive?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we still have remaining allocated contingency after, so it's partially funded by the allocated contingency that was already for contract and contract prescription. So that's offset. So there's allocated
It's just comfortable. Yeah.
Okay. Members, any other questions?
Could you just remind me, thanks, could you just remind me what's the top line number on the CCR 4 contract before this scope change?
$496 million and 4E or 4, I'm sorry, 4E?
For four. The
For
one
4. CCR 4 is
$496 million.
Right. So what we're talking about is about a 2% increase in the value of that contract overall.
Decrease.
Well, it's decreasing from
decrease
4.
on 4. We're adding this
On
to
the
4E.
4E, sorry, right. It's about 2%, roughly speaking. I'm just trying to get a sense of
I want to
the.
make sure we know
Make
which
sure we're
contract
talking-
we're
yeah,
talking
we-
about.
So and what is the?
This is 4E.
Right, so what's the 4E contract worth before this change? What was that?
79?
77.
Yeah.
$5 million change that was executed.
So yeah, that is an eye-opening number then in that case, as a proportion of that contract.
Okay. Any other questions, members? Okay. So the motion would be to approve this change order in the amount stated, rather than me having to read these numbers. Do I have a motion? And when I say approve, I believe this has to go to the full board. Both of these change orders are being approved out of the committee, but are going before the full board for further review and final approval. Right? So if I can clarify, the previous action that was taken also is going before the full board. So we're just approving it out of this committee to go to the full board.
So moved, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
Motion and seconded. Is there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you,
Thank you.
Directors.
Appreciate it. Moving on to the next agenda item. Item number 5, Resolution 2024-17, related to intention to acquire by eminent domain. Krista? Oh, before you start, excuse me, is there anybody in the audience that wishes to testify on this agenda item or online that wishes to testify? Nope. Okay, Krista?
Thank you. This is a request for approval to notify the city council of its intent to acquire an easement by eminent domain. Next slide, please. This is the map on the left shows an overhead of the property, and the easement runs along the side of the property adjacent to Kamehameha Highway. This is part of the relocation of the 138 KV line along Kamehameha Highway out on segment 1. The easement is for access and maintenance purposes. There will be a new high voltage power pole placed in the right of way near the left side of that property, and then the easement is to allow HECO access and access to maintain the line and pole. Next slide, please. And it just says necessary to relocate the 138 KV line along Kamehameha Highway in Section 1 due to the HRCP. Easement is being persuaded for purposes to operate and maintain a utility pole and overhead electrical line. HART is acquiring an easement pursuant to the HART and HECO Utility Inspection and Property Agreement of 2018. HART presented an offer prepared in compliance with the URA to the property owner in October of 2023 and has been attempting to negotiate a settlement since that time. To adhere to project schedule, it's necessary to refer the matter to condemnation. Efforts will be made to continue negotiations with the owner with the goal of reaching an amicable and reasonable settlement. Easement rights will be assigned to HECO once the condemnation has been completed. Next slide, please. This is just to remind of the eminent domain approval process. Upon approval of this resolution, Hart will inform the City Council of its intent to acquire the easement by eminent domain. City Council will have 45 days to approve or object to the condemnation by adopting a resolution of notification to acquire the property. Upon approval or no action by the City Council, the Board of Directors will be requested to approve a resolution authorizing the acquisition of the easement by eminent domain. Any questions?
Members, questions? No questions. So Krista, just to clarify, if the city council, if we take action on this today, the city council either takes no action or objects within the 45-day, it'll eventually come back to the board at that point in time for further action and final approval.
That's correct. It will go back to the full board for approval to actually file the condemnation action.
Okay, and if I heard you correctly, negotiations are still ongoing. It's just that we're at a point where we're exercising other options, additional options, as negotiations are continuing. But there's active discussions.
There are active discussions with the owner.
Okay. Okay. Any questions, members? Okay, so I need a motion to approve resolution number 2024-17.
So moved.
I'll second.
The motion and second, are we okay on, we're okay on quorum, yeah? Okay.
Okay.
So Robert, let's back up a sec. So we have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2024-17. Is there any further discussion? Robert, do you have any questions? This is on the notifying the city council of Hart's intent to begin eminent domain.
Okay, I don't have.
No questions?
No.
Okay. So there's been a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2024-17. Are there any objections to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes. Next agenda item number 6, resolution 2024-19, requesting the approval to provide a grant easement to Hawaiian Electric Company. Are there any members, is there any testifying in the testimony in the audience or online? Anybody wanting to testify on this agenda? Seeing none, Krista?
Thank you. This is a request for approval of a resolution to provide a grant of easement to Hawaii Electrical Company on property that's already owned by Hart under our control. Next slide, please. The property is shown there on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, it shows the actual easement area. It's 165 square feet. There will be a transformer and bollards placed within that area to protect the transformer. This is for the relocation work being done along Dillingham Boulevard. Background on the property, Hart did acquire this underlying property in April of 2014 for $1.1 million. The easement area will include a transformer and protective bollards. The facilities are part of the city center utility relocation, and they will service the public. Relocation of the utilities is necessary to allow for construction of the rail project. HECO requires an easement for long-term operations and maintenance of the electrical equipment. It's the responsibility of Hart to provide HECO with the property rights necessary for the electrical needs of the project. Therefore, there will be no compensation paid by HECO for this easement. Next slide, please. The City and County of Honolulu has a disposition process. So first of all, we do have the right to recommend to the City Council, or the Hart Board has a right to recommend to the City Council that this HECO that this easement be granted. So this resolution allows us to go before the city council to ask for approval to actually dispose of the easement. The HECO easement will allow for the placement of electrical equipment that's needed for the project. The requested easement does not conflict with Hart's use of the property for the rail. Upon approval of the resolution, the matter will go before the city council for approval to allow the executive director of Hart to execute the necessary documents to grant HECO the requested easement. And I just want to state that previously we had made changes to the easement document that allowed for Hart to also convey the easement if necessary to a third party, another party at their discretion, and that language is within the easement. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, questions?
Sorry, Krista, could you just repeat that very last thing you said?
Yeah, so I don't know if you'll recall, previously we had negotiated language in the documents that allows Hart at their own discretion to award an easement to another third party. And that language is within this easement document, which is Exhibit D to the resolution.
Great, thanks.
Just confirming that it's part of this
That
document.
was my issue years ago, so thanks,
you.
yep.
Yeah, Roger.
What is the intended use of the balance of the parcel? There's 6,500 square feet or so there. Is that for project purposes, or will that be surplus property, or what would be the intention of using that remnant or that property?
So that is for project purposes. If you'll notice, the property next door to it is also owned or vacant. It's also owned by the project, and then the one next to that is currently being acquired.
Is that a station? Or?
The station is adjacent to those properties. And so I'm not sure if it's a park and ride or something of that nature, but it's something to do with the station in that area.
That station is,
Kali,
that's Pearl Ridge?
no, it's Dillingham and Mokoea.
Okay, Kalihi Station.
Yes, Kalihi
Right.
Station. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah, Robert.
Just for clarification, if Hart as an organization want to have a perpetual easement, say with another private homeowner, landowner, do we have to pay anything?
If we want to purchase an easement or,
No, just like in this case, HECO is not purchasing it, right? We're just giving them a perpetual right to the easement. So if Hart would Hart be able to do that perpetually with a private landowner and not pay anything?
private landowner probably wouldn't want an easement of that nature, but say perhaps they wanted to do access and it was going to go across the whole property
Yeah.
or something like that. We would have the right to sell that with FTA's approval and the board approval, as long as it didn't conflict with the
No,
project.
we want to use it, not if they want to.
Because it's our response. You mean, why did Hart pay for it and HECO is not?
Your question is, for example,
Yeah,
when we need a perpetual easement, we pay the property owner.
That's right,
Why
yes.
is HECO not having to pay?
That's right,
So
yes.
You know the answer.
Yeah, so there's an agreement in place that was executed in 2018 that says any costs associated with the relocation of utilities is Hart's to bear. So they need this easement, so it has to be at our cost.
I guess the point is HECO wouldn't be putting in this infrastructure if it wasn't for us.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And we have made sure that HECO does pay when they need access for something that isn't for our purposes.
That's correct.
As we did with the Kakako property.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I'm not ragging on HECO or anything. I just want to know, you know, in a similar situation, would we not have to pay for something like that, right? Yeah. Okay, thanks. Got it.
Any other questions? So Krista, I mean, I know that maybe you may not be able to answer this, but I mean, is there any information you can provide as to why this piece of equipment, or Lori, why this piece of equipment is needed in this particular spot for the project? Or is there anything that any information you can provide?
I just know that it's a transformer.
Right. Thanks, Matt.
I don't know what a transformer does.
If my memory serves me correct, this is the nature of bringing down the overhead utilities and putting a lot of it underground. And so these were previously pole-mounted transformers, excuse me, serving these properties. And we're installing a lot of ground-mounted transformers at this point to replace those service connections.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Members, any other questions? So if there aren't any other questions, yes, go ahead.
I guess this is more for Laurie. In terms of hardening these electrical facilities, do we know what kind of sea level rise HECO is preparing for in that area?
I don't know what HECO's plans are. Matt, you wouldn't know either. Yeah.
But the responsibility for hardening them against sea level rise is HECO's, not Hart's, right? Thanks, Chair.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I need a motion to approve resolution number 2024-19 and refer it to the full board for further review and approval.
So moved, Chair.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, are there any objections? Before we take the final vote, I do wanna make a disclosure that I am employed by IBEW 1260 and Hawaiian Electric is our signatory. With that said, is there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't believe there's anything else for action on this agenda. The next item is adjournment. So if there is no further business, this POC committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Michelle, can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay, we're on.
Okay, good. Just start. There's no countdown.
Yeah, there was a countdown. Sorry. You didn't.
sorry, I
You
didn't
weren't
hear it.
able to hear it. Sorry.
Okay. Good morning. This is Michelle Brunker. We're chair of the HR committee. It's July 11th. It's 7-Eleven free Slurpees, everybody. It's 10:05 in the morning. It's serious, free Slurpees. You get a Hawaii bag too if you buy anything. I'm calling the committee to order. Taking roll. I'm here. Anthony Alto,
Present.
Roger Morton,
Present.
Art Tolentino,
Present.
Kika Bukowski is here. Is that it? I think Roger left. Robert left, right? Okay. I'm calling for any public testimony on any of the agenda items. Just let me know if there is public testimony before each agenda item, Cindy, if we don't hear anything here, and I'll take it, but I'm not going to call for it on the agenda items.
Okay, thank you, Chair. There is none at this time.
Okay. Is Sandy here? Or is Lori going to do it?
Sandy's here.
She's coming.
Okay. All right. Hi, Sandy. Let's move to agenda item 3, Heart Personnel and Vacancy Update.
Good morning, everyone. So first of all, I'll just give an update on our staffing. We currently have 39 full-time employees. We did bring on full-time employees on July 1st. We did have a departure on July 5th. So with that said, our open positions, I'll just go through them probably through using the legend as a guideline. So the first item on the legend is the top priority positions, and they are coded in green. There are 4 positions there. Currently, we don't have any candidates that meet the minimum qualifications, but for the candidates that did apply, we are searching and that did not meet the minimum qualifications. We're searching to see if they might be a fit for positions that you have open.
Hey, Sandy, I got a question.
Yes.
So, sometimes if we might have a position and we're not getting qualified candidates, we could make kind of what I would call like progressive qualifications, sort of like you need a smaller set of minimums, and then within a certain time period, you need to meet the minimum qualifications. So we give people a chance to finish school or get a certification or whatever we think some experience they might need, under their belt, and we can like do that. Is that possible here, or is it because there's the way that you graded it has to have those specific qualifications at the time that they're hired?
I believe that we're trying to find the candidates that best meet the position closest to their qualifications, because we are using the city's specifications as our guideline.
So I can add to that, Michelle. For example, on the table numbers, actually all the ones that have 1, 2, 3, and 4 behind it, we absolutely bring the MQs down to the lowest level so that we can bring them in. So for example, an information specialist, there's 1, 2s, and 3s. We would love to bring somebody in at a 3, but if they only meet the minimum qualifications of a 1, absolutely, we're bringing them in. The ones that she has highlighted as green, absolutely not. Are we bringing them down to a lower level? These are high-level management positions, so we don't want somebody, for example, the Deputy Director of Construction Claims, we don't want that person with very minimal experience. But for the other positions, yes, absolutely, we're trying to do that. And to Sandy's point, so maybe they applied for an information specialist, but they don't quite meet the MQs even for a 1. Well, can they fit somewhere else in our organization that they meet MQs for that position? So we're trying every which way to see how, especially if they have a good attitude when we interview them, can we bring them in and train them up to what we need them to be?
And are you also looking at those lower positions, like, like a transit arts coordinator? I mean, you could probably find, you know what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely.
Like, just shove people in there. I'm probably more concerned with not the green ones, but the ones that have like 200, 300 days on them that, you're like, we're struggling to do that. And a civil engineer 5, that's a difficult position to fill. And so, we did talk about either looking for people that could fill them on a 90-day, if possibly, or whether you could move that down to like a 4, for example.
Yeah, all our engineering positions we have between 1 through 5. So absolutely, even though it just says a 5 there, if a person has an engineering degree with maybe 1 year experience, they would probably qualify for a 3. So absolutely, even though she doesn't have it listed specifically for the civil engineer, we are trying to see if we can bring in entry-level engineers. We also already have interns coming in at that level, and we've had several stay on. Even though they're at school, they stay on throughout, and hopefully these guys, when they graduate in 2 years, they stay with heart.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult, with the salaries that we're offering, to find a 5. And so, especially something like that that's been open for, basically a whole year.
Understood. Yep.
It'd be useful to, try to just look for somebody that could be mentored, for example. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Trevor's a good example. We have somebody that came in, he doesn't quite meet the MQs for a quality engineer, but Trevor is willing to train this person. He's really a blank slate. And so I commend Trevor for being willing to do that, because it takes a lot of effort, but that's a really good example of what one of our managers is doing.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Go on. So when using the legend again, the positions that are highlighted in white, we are actively recruiting and doing phone screens for most of them. There are 11 of those positions that are highlighted in white. Then going down to the blue area, these are future positions that we don't have posted. There are 15 of those. We're currently reviewing the job description for them, and once they're assessed, we will be posting all of those positions. So,
Quick question.
Go ahead.
You
ahead,
know,
Art.
these positions, my current understanding is they do sunset. Is this permanent positions?
Oh, all
Career
of our,
positions?
yes, all of our positions are personal services contracts, so
Yeah.
every year we need to renew their contract, yes.
And and they sunset. And I'm wondering why there's not a lot of interest. What does, and you may not know the answer right now, but what does the city's recruitment process look? Is there a lot of potential for lateral movement from this to eventually going to the city? And I say that because this is not so much a career job because it sunsets, and you know, some of the applicants may be looking for a career. So is there room for lateral movement? Is what I'm saying in the system, so that you can entice.
Sure.
Yeah.
So for our positions, it's not a done deal where it's a lateral. You would have to apply like anybody
Sure.
else, but at least you have a leg in the door. A lot of these general positions, absolutely, there's positions in the city. We have some that are so specialized that no, it's not there. But I would say a majority of our positions, yes, there are positions equal in the city.
I appreciate that.
And
Thank you.
We have hired some former HART employees, so it's not unusual. Wish we could get more.
Right.
You can't have any more, Roger.
and I might add that we are actually working to purchase a applicant tracking system. So with this applicant tracking system, we're able to increase our open positions. We can post an additional job boards to increase more activity there. So hopefully when that's done, we'll be in a better position.
There's a lot of job fairs that go on during the year. I'm just wondering if you guys participate.
Absolutely do.
A lot of legs
I
walking
personally
today.
go.
Good job.
And we're bringing our managers at the next one because when, with just feedback from, Roger and I went to an APTA conference in Cleveland, and the big thing is recruitment and retention. And so some of the ideas that those people were talking about, and even our managers asked, can we do on-the-spot offer letters? We can, especially because, and I know this is an agenda item coming up on PSCs. That's why we can. We have that flexibility. So I want the managers, there's a table, go off on the side, interview that guy, and if you think it's a fit, he meets the MQs, Sandy guys are gonna have offer letters right there on the spot. It's still with the caveat, you need to pass the background check, gotta pass DHR. But once that goes through, hopefully within a few weeks, boom, we can give them a official offer letter.
Nice.
So, yes.
Thank you.
The one we missed out on was the UH College of Engineering. It's like that fair fills up that day. And by the time we got the announcement, I think there was a glitch because I think even you folk, did you guys miss it too, Roger? Are you going to the College of Engineering?
No, we went to the last one, but
Us too.
Yeah.
Us too. But no, we go.
yeah, but all the consultants show up there too. I mean, and they're cherry picking. Yep.
Thank you.
Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Roger.
You know, the 800-pound gorilla for recruitment sometimes is the pay that we have, the compensation level. As of July 1st, the city has increased their engineer pay by more than 10%, in some cases up to 20%. The state has changed their schedule as well and has a schedule that's now even higher than the city. My understanding is that none of these are applicable to HART contract positions. Is that the case?
Is that true?
I believe so.
So I think that's like I think
Yes.
we need to push back on that if that is the case.
I didn't know that.
That they're making these supplementary schedules only applicable to permanent civil service employees, and that'll put HART at a even greater disadvantage in trying to compete for, and this is specifically for engineering talent, as there are supplemental schedules now, both in the city and state for higher pay. And I don't know, I mean, I would be in favor, but I definitely think that, that Hart needs to you know, to discuss it with the city authorities, including the mayor and the Department of Human Resources as well.
I was not under the realization that we were exempt from that. I just assumed that we were part of that. I will follow up on that.
Anyway, that's my understanding, and Sandy is confirming it.
Yes, I believe that's what
Yep.
it is. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have one. We talked, I don't know, many moons ago, maybe sort of like when you first came on board, Sandy, about the Indeed, use of Indeed, and where are we with the request for a contract?
So we are working, this is part of our applicant tracking system because Indeed actually participates on that applicant tracking system. So once...
So, go ahead.
Oh, no. So once that is in place, you know, there really shouldn't be any change except for we are working on sponsorship, procuring the sponsorship for that.
Chair.
What does that mean? Yeah, go ahead.
So I know at a previous board meeting, I said that we had used Indeed. In fact, we don't use Indeed, we use LinkedIn. We use the LinkedIn Professional, which is kind of like Indeed, and they go out and they actively do it. But our contract is part of a Jacobs effort on recruitment that we have with Jacobs. And so Jacobs is actually the entity that uses Indeed. And I just wanted to clarify because I gave false information previously. I thought it was our contract, but it's not. It's a Jacobs contract. But nonetheless, it is a strategy to use those types of recruitment tools by, you know, the way we do it. There's a person within the Jacobs organization that manages this part of the contract, and they're very active in reaching out to people, and it's a potential tool.
So when the employee comes in, are they coming in as a Jacobs employee or city employee?
No, they're part. The recruitment effort is to recruit them as city employees.
Interesting.
Again, we run into the problem of pay, and that's been the big problem is having enough pay. East Coast applicants laugh at our compensation levels, and you know that's just the way it is. But
So did you do an open procurement to have this contract with Jacobs to be like your HR recruitment entity?
it's a DO, a DO, direct order, or you know, through our larger underlying master agreement with Jacobs, a delivery order. And it is you know, I mean, it would probably, I mean, in us, initially it requires a contract amendment, but it's within the larger contract.
Okay.
And so, Sandy, what's the timeline of getting this employment, whatever it is,
The tracking system.
software tracking
Yeah,
system?
So hopefully we're looking maybe around the September timeframe. It just depends on the vendor that we're using.
Right, but is it a competitive procurement to figure out who the vendor is?
No, we're using our current provider that manages our Hart website. So they are going to be procuring from a third party the software
Oh, okay,
and install
okay.
it.
But your team will be the people using it.
Correct. It'll be installed on our
Okay.
website.
And some of the underlying things will be third-party vendors, like Indeed, for example, or LinkedIn, or something like that.
Yes, we will have an opportunity to post on many other job boards.
Okay, because that's what the software does. Okay, does anybody have any more questions?
I have just a comment. You know, and what we're seeing a lot lately, and you know, it's starting here, but across the U.S. now, there's bounties on signing bonuses, or even we employ you, and after 1 year, if you stay here, you get a bonus or a bounty of $5,000 or $10,000. But I'm sure that would attract a lot of people and fill a lot of positions. But is that something that we would consider if there's a position that we desperately need to fill? Just an observation
Fan
of
of that. What's going on. I just don't, I think that causes disparity, especially for my existing employees. They didn't get a signing bonus. But I know I was very shocked HPD is doing that. I just didn't think union-wise, how are they able to do it? But HGA and UPW, we can't do that. So, but yeah, I'm not in favor of it, but I'm not opposed, especially like the high level. But I just think it causes disparity with my staff.
Yeah, I'm not particularly opposed to retention bonuses for people, and I'm definitely not opposed to something reasonable if we find the right person to, pay moving costs, for example. It is really challenging with existing employees, I think. But other things like, paying off student loans or some of these other kinds of incentives could be useful. Right. Anthony, you had a question.
Sort of a general one. I guess it's for Laurie, which is that if we look at the open positions that we're actively recruiting for and the positions that we think at the moment we don't have the capacity to recruit for, we're about 40 to 45% below where we would like our staffing level to be. And that means that your staff are working harder, I'm assuming. They're doing, from my point of view at least, an excellent job.
Very excellent job.
They got the job, they got the project back on track. I'm just wondering, long term, what's the stress level in having to, because presumably they're having to cover those 40 to 45% of positions that are still open.
Well, remember, and we're going to talk about this in the next agenda item, this is just city staff. So we do have what we call Heart Ohana. We are augmented by the consultants. I absolutely prefer to have city staff, but failure is not an option, and so we do augment with the consultants. But even with that, the consultants, the staff, they are doing multiple jobs, because we are short-staffed even on that side. Even the consultants are having a hard time to recruit. So I think I've said in previous board meetings, it's not sustainable that these guys are working constantly at such a high level. I mean, they're doing great. They are doing terrific. But I am concerned that we have to backfill quite a bit of these positions. So don't just look at the city. This is only city. We do have about 100 to 140 Heart Ohana staff.
Basically, what I'm concerned about is burnout. Obviously, we don't want people to burn out.
Yes.
Have you concerns? I mean, are you worried? Have people come to you saying, "Look, I've been at this pace for X number of months, and I'm starting to burn out"?
I have not. But I mean, I'm not meeting one-on-one with the consultants. I meet with the city staff, but I could start meeting with the consultants. But I have not heard that. Maybe Matt, or no, not really. Okay, our team is terrific.
I guess, Anthony, what I'd say is I'd suggest that, although we are working really hard, we had time in the last couple of years. Laurie and I talked about this previously. Even though we've had a challenge with recruitment, this was the time to recruit people, even though you may not be 150% utilizing all of them, because this is the time before we start the push into the city center guideway. And so from this point forward, it will just start to ramp up. So in some ways, this is the lull before the last push, where we're getting utilities ready, we're getting, that kind of stuff ready. We delivered some the segments to operations, and we're getting contracts ready to put proposals on the street and everything for CCGS. And this next 18 months coming in is going to start really, really ramping up with more people with design and then design and then design and then construction, right? So it'd be pre-acquisition of all the materials. It's a good time to get people familiar with the project so that they can kind of ramp up with everybody else if we're hiring new people. And that's why this was kind of a really big opportunity to try to, get our hiring in before we started CCGS. Unfortunately, we're not really there. And maybe we can just roll into 4 and talk about, this was Kika had we had a note from the board of directors meeting, and Kika had a question to Lori about any potential deletions of positions. And I think it was with respect to, kind of like what the numbers look like. To me, I get what the numbers look like, but if there are positions that we're going to need, then there are positions we're going to need, and we should keep them on the board and keep trying to recruit for them. But I want to hear what Lori's position is, and I added potential additions because, sometimes you just want to just move stuff around. So add something, take something away.
I appreciated that comment from Kika. I am open to looking at our org chart to see if there's positions to be eliminated and created. Like I mentioned, it's so simple here at Hart. With all I need is the board approval. At City, I absolutely would not get rid of positions because it's an act of God to get them put back. But here, not so bad. So it's only been 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks since that last meeting. So I have not had the opportunity to sit down with my managers to see, are there some positions that we can streamline, get rid of? I did that originally, right? In fact, you folks approved it, I think, earlier this year. We went from 135 positions down to 98, and I am definitely open to streamlining and maybe adding different positions as the managers and us discuss this. But we have not had that within the last 2 weeks.
I kind of wanted to have an open discussion here because I am very in favor of having government oversight in every area that Hart is working. Even if what we're creating are positions where we might even have a junior person and we have what you're calling Hart Ohana, but consultants, which are basically contractors performing the work. There needs to be not just government people over their department, like another supervisor above them, but I think that there should be shoulder to shoulder working. If we can, even if you can get junior people, they can be mentored by the consultants, and they would be performing an important government function, both in terms of their responsibility in terms of executing the dollars and verifying that the work is getting done. So I would encourage all the managers to look across and try to make sure that, regardless of whether you have somebody really good in charge there, that you actually have a government partner for the consultants that are working there, so that there is true government oversight. Because I don't think that you can. And I want to try to make sure I say it correctly, but sometimes the government people that are they think they're watching. They're not really watching. They're performing a fiduciary duty to the taxpayers, right? And so I think that's important to have people across the organization like that.
Agreed. There is always government oversight on everything that we do within Hart.
Right. There's government oversight, but not shoulder to shoulder. Like, you don't have somebody working in a partnership in some areas. There are only consultants in some areas. There's somebody over them, like another person in a supervisory box, but not in their box, right?
Yeah. So maybe oversight isn't the correct word, but maybe training, mentoring.
Right. I think it's right. And I think it's a shoulder to shoulder kind of thing where they have some responsibility to, and maybe it's to run the contract, right? And they learn how to do some of that as well as, like some of the work, but that they do have a role.
Yes.
And that we make sure that we're developing people to have bigger roles, because those are some of the places where you can train people, right?
Yes.
Anyway, okay. Anybody else have any comments? Kika, do you have any comments? Because I think they're going to be starting to work on this, and in another couple of months, we can probably ask them what they think.
Not at this time, Chair, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, let's go to 5, Hart Board of Directors, 9th voting member recruitment process. And Cindy, I was hoping if you could just fill us all in on what the process is going to be to recruit the 9th voting member.
Okay. Sure. Thank you, Chair. So in order to fill the Hart Board 9th voting member position, we currently have the application process, the application period open currently. It'll be open till tomorrow. Our PI team was good enough to assist us in getting the word out to the media. I think we had a spot on the news, right? Advertising the vacancy. We've got it posted on the Hart website. And so far, we've received 1 application. There was some suggestion that perhaps, if we didn't get enough applications, that we might want to extend that application period. I don't know if that's the desire of the committee, but we can certainly talk about that. As you recall, at the last board meeting, the board established a PIG that would basically kick in the event that we had more than 3 candidates, and do some preliminary screening, and then kick up the 3 finalists to the full board for their consideration. So, seeing as we have currently 1 candidate and the application deadline is tomorrow, perhaps I should pose a question to the committee whether or not we want to keep that deadline or if we want to extend the deadline.
I'd be okay extending it a week. What about everybody else?
Me too.
Yeah, I think we'd like to see if we, there was such overwhelming public testimony about Hart, and, nobody wants to help. So, go ahead, Roger.
I know there might have been one news coverage of it. I didn't happen to see it. I don't know if any of the other board members were. I got something, I think, on Monday or Tuesday that talked about this. I'm in favor of extending it, but I'm also sort of urging my fellow board members to try to circulate this around so that we could have at least 3 applicants would be nice, and so that we would continue to have the ability to select a diverse pool of applicants. I note that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 females on the board right now out of like 12 or 13 or something. So we don't really have a really good gender balance on the board, and I would definitely be in favor of extending it for 1 week, but I think it would be a useless extension unless board members and others really try to provide better, a better circulation of the information, just so that, and I know how hard it is to get people to want to be on this board. I've had many people that have said that they're, thank you very much, but no way that we're interested. So I know how hard that can be, but still, I think that extending it for a week and then having the board at least circulate it within the professional circles that they're in would be worthwhile.
I'll make a motion.
Is a week long enough, you guys, or should we make it longer than that? I mean, we want the right person, right?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks, and then we can maybe talk about it at the board meeting.
Yeah.
Can we still put that on the an update? Maybe we could just put an update just to let everybody know and see if we want to keep extending it.
Sure, we can do that, but remember the authority is with the committee at this time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we can certainly provide an update to the board at its July 26th meeting.
Well, okay, so if it's with the committee at this time, and we're talking about the process, right? So, if we extend it by a certain time period, and then if we have 3 or less candidates, they'll just go to the full board, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We could include the interviews of the applicants on the full board agenda for July 26th. If we extend the application deadline by a couple of weeks. So say, no. I'm sorry, that wouldn't be enough time.
Yeah, you could only extend it by about a week, and then
By
you'd
about
have
a
to
week,
schedule
right.
the interviews and everything and put it on the board meeting, and then we might only have still just one candidate, which doesn't stop us from interviewing a candidate, but still leaving it open, you know.
And recall, I'm sorry, recall that if we get more than 3 applicants, the PIG will have to
PIG
do its
kicks
preliminary
in.
screening work before
Yeah.
the finalists go to the full board.
Yeah. Well, I'm okay with extending it a week and even extending it to 2 and just giving them a status. I'd rather have more candidates and have to weed through them than too few candidates. I mean, not that the one candidate isn't good. It's just that, you know, I want to make sure that we, like what Roger said, that we've kind of dug around and tried to find some people that you know, I mean, that might be interested in performing a service and being the 9th voting member and are interested in working on it. It's an actually interesting part of the project, really, when you're getting to the city center. So
Chair?
yeah, go ahead, Anthony. What do you think?
I just wanted to do a sort of a shout out. I'm not sure how many members of the public watch this, but I just want to speak as a volunteer, unpaid member of this board. It's extraordinarily worthwhile. We're working on the most important infrastructure project in the state's history. You have an opportunity to work with a bunch of extremely talented, diverse, passionate people with a lot of expertise, and it's extremely worthwhile. So if anybody's out there is thinking about joining the board, I would encourage them to put in their application.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yes. Anybody else?
Chair,
Yes.
there's a motion on the floor for 1 week extension.
Okay.
Seconded.
Okay. Anybody have any comments? Everybody agree? Okay, let's keep it open for another week. Thank you, Cindy. Okay, agenda number 6, HART Board of Directors Public Relations Function. And I guess this was kind of like an open discussion that I wanted to have here in terms of what the function might be and, you know, how we might think about contracting for it, how it would interact with the existing public relations functions at HART, what functions it would do for the board in terms of conveying policy information across HART. And, you know, like, you know, I had talked about, you know, like what I've used before are like elevator speech cards where, you know, if we have an important event like the opening, we're all kind of saying the same thing. And it's not that you can't say anything off the card, but that when we do say it, talk about certain topics that we're all having the same status. So I guess I'd just like to talk about this public relations function because we haven't really talked about it in a lot of detail before. And I think that there's also probably some challenges with, you know, what it sounds like. It sounds like, well, you're getting a PR for the board. And I think of it like that, but I also think of it as something for strategy, something that Main HART may not do a lot of advocacy, for example, of extensions, and the extension pig is going to be finishing up at the end of this year, the beginning of next year. And those are things that we're going to start to prepare for as we continue to complete the program and look towards, what makes sense. So, I was hoping, Anthony, you might have some, insight into some of the initial scope that we might talk about for something like this.
Thanks for putting me on the spot, Chair.
Or Lori might have something about, there's always, there's going to be concerns between, there's two public relations named things, and like, how do they interact? What do they do together? That kind of stuff. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Anthony.
Well, I mean, I would reiterate what I said last time this came up, which is that I don't think it's our job to hire somebody to try to convince the public that they should love something that they don't love at the moment. I still think that's the case. I think the way that we get the public to love this project is by completing it as efficiently and cost effectively as we can and getting people to ride it. And I think as that happens, and this is an experience nationwide, this experience of the public being upset with the construction process, with the delays and the cost overruns that are inevitable in any major infrastructure project of this scope, inevitable, and it is inevitable that the public get upset. The experience around the country is once the project is finished and people actually get a chance to start using it, then they actually fall in love with it, and then you get an extraordinary situation such as in Los Angeles, where the public votes to tax themselves another $5 billion to expand their mass transit system. So if that's the concept that we got to try and persuade the public to like this project, I frankly think it would probably be a waste of money. On the other hand, if there's a lot of misinformation out there, there's a lot of misunderstanding. People do not understand just how big transportation is in the average household budget. It's the second or third largest item in the average household budget on Oahu. It's a huge chunk of money coming out of the average household budget. Most people aren't aware of that. Most people aren't aware of the ultimate potential for savings in household budgets, for boosting our environmental resilience against climate change, and that sort of thing. And that is something that I think could usefully be done to educate the people out there about that, what we're doing, what their money is buying them. And then the question that I have is the timing. Is this the right moment to do it? We've talked about how this is no secret. We're going to go to the public and say that we think that the system needs to be extended beyond Ala Moana. And clearly that is going to have to be a conversation with the public about that, and we're going to have to inform them as to why we think that that's important. So we are going to have to do something along these lines. What I'm not clear about in my own mind is whether it means hiring somebody to work just for the board, or whether we actually have a specific task that we want to contract out to a public relations agency or a advertising agency to do that educational component. So those are some of my comments on this, Chair.
I have my own.
Okay.
Regarding if the intent is for the extensions, I don't think that's Hart's Kuleana, and definitely not Hart Board's Kuleana to be selling this. We don't even know what our authority is as far as extension goes. We are part of the puzzle, but we don't have that authority. I'm not even clear if is it OMPO, is it city administration, is it city council, is it the public? They have to vote on it. So this is very premature if that's what the intent of this contract is. We're not there yet, and it's not our purview. We are to construct. We are told what we want, what they want constructed, and we execute. as far as getting the message out of potential, I don't think that's us. And if the board has things that they want to get out into the public, we have our existing PR firm already. You folks have already tapped into them. The 9th board member, we did that. Heart PI team and Pan Communication. Everything about announcements on the board, whether people are coming and going, we did that. Our PR firm did that. I don't think it's necessary that we have another one. You folks have full access to them. I don't think it's necessary to spend another $110,000 on this. We spend about $8,000 to $9,000 a month with Pan Communications, and you folks are more than welcome to communicate directly with them on what messages you want out there. But if it's just to talk about extensions, this is very premature, and I don't think it's in our kuleana to do that.
Okay, that's a good point. I don't think it's just about extensions. I think that we've really struggled with a strategic plan, that we don't have one for Hart real well, that defines, how we're going to get to Ala Moana, for example, what our future vision is, how we're going to set that goal and how we're going to meet that goal. And so that actually is part of our responsibility.
Do you need a PR firm for that? That's internal to us.
We're talking about public relations, and like I said in the beginning, it's not entirely clear to me that it's just public relations, right? And I'm not trying to get into an argument with you, Laurie. I mean, I hear that you have strong feelings about it, but I'm not. What the initial thing that we talked about was, do we need to have two? This is an open discussion, and I mean, I'd like to hear other people's opinions about it as well. I mean, it got shoved into this committee because it was, how do you get one of these? The discussion that we had was at the board of directors, and that's where, it was talked about, and then it got pushed down to the HR committee of, okay, go get one, right? So in some ways, the definition of it or the scope or how we do it is fully up to this committee to make a recommendation back to the board. So, keep talking, Lori, because I think in addition to some of your concerns, I think that I'd like to hear some ways that you think it could be useful, that if you said we could use the ones that are already in place, how you think that, where do you think the board is missing in terms of communicating information, what would be useful, how we could potentially use the PR firm that you have so far and share that, and what would make sense. Sure. So go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Roger. Go ahead.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I'm not sure organizationally how the board could direct such an effort. And I'm not sure that even under the charter, whether the board has that responsibility to direct that effort. I also note that we have two open information specialist positions that are on our priority recruitment page. And I hear the term public relations, and I think the public has a sort of a negative connotation toward that term. It's one thing to provide information. It's another thing to do that. And I'm in favor of outreach and getting messages out to the community. I'm just not sure if the board had that. I don't know how the board would manage that effort. Would it come under the chair? Would it come under committee chair? Would it report to the board assistant? I mean, it just seems that it would be an activity that would be difficult for the board as a whole to manage. So I would be in favor of leaving information within the executive part of HART.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Chair. Kika. If no one else in the committee.
Go ahead, Kika.
Yeah, thank you. If no one else in the committee has comments, I mean, I'm not on the HR committee, but, I think I expressed some concern in the last, I think it was a board meeting, I can't remember. But, our budget, as far as the board is concerned, has increased over 100% as opposed to the rest of Hart, which has actually decreased. And whether it's 100,000 or 100 million or a billion, I still think I struggle with finding the utility in such a position. I mean, I've been approached by media for comment on issues, and my basic comment is whatever I have to say, you can hear it in the board meeting. I don't need a third party to translate what I have to say, so that I'm not sure if there's a translation that's needed. I guess what I'm trying to say is I struggle trying to find I'm struggling to see the need of a PR firm to translate what the board has to say when what we have to say is said in the board meetings and in public. It is what it is. And I agree with some of the comments. I think this is a stretch as far as what our primary function is as a board. I think this is a stretch. And whatever information that we need to get out to the public, I really think that we can already accommodate that through our existing resources, as we have been for as long as Hart has been in existence. And I guess my only question is more to the process of, I know that this position has been budgeted, but I mean, have we decided that we're actually going to fill it? And if we haven't, or if we have, I'd be interested to know when that decision was made and who made it, because I don't recall voting on anything to say that we're actually going to fill the position. I know that you're having an open discussion today as far as possibly the scope and the function of this position. But, I just want to make known that at some point in time, I think that based on whatever this committee comes out with as far as scope, I do believe that it should come before the full board as far as whether or not the board decides whether or not this position should actually be filled or not. And I guess that's kind of a question. I'm not sure if you can answer at this point, but if that's your understanding as well, or is it a foregone conclusion that we're going to fill this position?
Cindy, can you remind us what the board asked us to do?
I believe that was part of the board's charge to the HR committee, is to discuss not just what the function of the position would be, but whether it's even something that the board desires. So I believe that's the threshold question.
Well, it sounds like, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to use the existing PR firm that we have if we have any PR needs. The question is, we have a mechanism in place to do that. I don't know how many times we have used the PR firm. Have we ever used it, Cindy? I mean, we must have used it before for something.
You have used Pang about 20 times since we've had
Yeah,
a
so
contract. Yes.
Yeah, we must have used them. So, I mean, it's not like we're unable to use any of the Hart resources that we need to use inside the executive function. So, I think that's probably the general feeling that we have here, is that maybe that money might be spent in a different way. For example, I remember when Cindy, you had I think 3 people in your organization previously, and now we've just gotten back to you. So we might want to. Sorry, my mom's still in the hospital. I'm getting phone calls anyway because they're trying to move her to a different room right now. Maybe we need to put some emphasis on, the executive officer office staffing versus this function or something else. You know, I mean, I don't know, what's everybody's feeling on that? Did I get the feeling of everybody in the committee right? That doesn't seem like this is probably like the most useful, the best use of our resources, especially for additional resources that, you know, that we could be using on the project or saving for something else. You know, we're still talking about making sure that we can complete the program.
So the staffing budget for Cindy, it's in the budget already.
Right, so that's already in the budget.
Yeah, it's already, so you don't have to worry about thinking, oh, okay, I have to move the 110 to help fund that. No, it's separate and it's there already. This is in
Right, so
addition.
yeah. So my question is, should we put an emphasis on that? Because you can only do so many things at one time, right? Like, why would I buy this when, you know, I can't even get my meetings scheduled? Like, Cindy's only one person. Getting her somebody that can help her do that and, you know, like, answer board questions, that might be a function that we want to work on and do the vacancy announcement and try to put something out there.
Agreed.
Right?
So if you go back to Sandy's table, number 11, which is highlighted in orange, we stopped taking action on that. And so we just need the go ahead from Cindy. Yep, go ahead, post, and then we'll give her all of the application and she can go through that. So, yeah.
Right.
So we're ready to go on that whenever she is.
Yeah. So is that kind of the feeling from the HR committee, is that, you know, what we probably would recommend is that this is not a function that we would really recommend at this time, that we would try using Pang and like, you know, see how it works out and see what our needs are. But right now the members don't see a need for a new PR contract for the board of directors or a new function. That we're probably all saying the same thing. We want to maybe say it a different way. We could utilize some assistance, maybe if we have something that needs to go out in terms of sending it over to Pang and having them take a look at it and having it come back, but that we don't really see a whole. Is that kind of the feeling from everybody? Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, we sometimes spend half an hour talking about how to spend sums of money much smaller than this. I mean, we had a long conversation about a donation of $800 from Move Oahu Forward. So I don't take lightly the idea of spending six figures and on this position. And I also, the idea of having two different PR centers, if you like, in our organization sounds a little bit conflictive to me. The one thing I would say is that since I've been on the board, we've actually never met with Pang. We don't. And I'm wondering maybe it might be useful to have a briefing, where the board could just share the sorts of things that we would like to see them doing that they may not be doing at the moment. That educational function that I was talking about, since they're already on board and we're already paying them whatever it is, $8,000 to $9,000 a month. Why don't we tap into that?
Absolutely. We can arrange that.
Yeah, why don't we? That's a good idea. I think I like that idea as well. What I think I struggled with was, the board can't put anything out unless the board all agrees that's the thing that we're all going to put out. So, there might be something that comes out in the news and then we're like, oh my God, that's totally wrong. But we can't even respond to it because the whole board has to get together and say, hey, that's not what we said in the meeting, right? So we say it is a meeting and they say, and I say, well, watch it on TV. Well, they get it wrong, okay? Because I've seen that. And there's no way for us to respond to that. So I think we're looking for a way to respond if there's incorrect information, for example, going out there without the board having to approve something going out. You know what I'm saying?
We can help with that, Michelle. So whenever something goes out into the media and or the media picks up what's happening in the meeting, or we did an interview and it's incorrect, that is the number one thing Pang does. They will contact the media and said, you got this incorrect. So for example, there was something about, they kept calling me mayor's appointee. We've corrected them numerous times and we go all the way to the editor's level. I don't believe you need full board approval to make a to correct them. when
Right.
They're incorrect.
Yeah.
So we can absolutely help with that. Or Pam can, yes.
Okay.
Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you. And I also do believe that we have, and I can't recall the exact name of the committee, but we have a committee in the rules that was actually specifically set up to address quick response to issues that require it. So for this, well, it may not solve all the concerns that we have, but it was. I do recall there's a committee and it's established in the rules, and it was to address a quick response if needed, rather
Yeah,
than
I think there's
having
an
to.
executive committee, right? There's
Yes,
an executive
yes.
committee that can meet, and it's just a small number of you guys that like, I'm not
Yes.
on it, but like you guys meet and then like you can do something like if you need to make a decision, if you need to spend money, if you need to do something really quickly. Yeah. I mean,
Was,
I am,
yeah.
I would say I am concerned with sometimes people getting it wrong. So Lori, if you could ask Pang to, if they're talking about the board, just have them keep an eye out. And if we see anything, we can send it back to Cindy and she can convey that back to you guys as well. I have
absolutely.
seen things
Yeah.
and it irritates me and I'm just like, ugh.
Absolutely. In fact, Joey just reminded me, Cindy has been doing that. She'll point out to us that, hey, this is inaccurate. And let's say in the advertiser, she contacts Joey and then we tell Pang, correct that till the meet. And whether they correct it or not, that's not up to us, but at least we have it on record that we told them this is inaccurate. So that process is already happening.
Okay.
Chad, quick question for Laurie. What are the lines of communication internally? So, for example, if Michelle sees an issue in the media and she gets upset, she calls Cindy, take care of it. Can Cindy get in touch directly with Pang, or does she have to go through somebody?
Cindy usually goes through Joey.
Through Joey?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, because we need to monitor because we're paying for it, right?
Well, that's
so
what
we
I'm
need
asking.
to make sure that we know what's going on. But
So-
Joey's really quick, even when he's off.
All right. So that's the line of communication is through Joey.
Yes.
Thanks, Chair.
Chair, just a few words. I'm with the board's feeling about this proposed position of a public outreach person or communications outreach person. And I get that we might be layering responsibilities and might be redundant, but I guess my question would be, for me to fully understand this position, is there a job description or a scope of work, a job description of this position, so I can fully understand that maybe we might be covering part of what this person would do and not know what other services this position can provide the administration. That's all I'm saying.
I think that was the point of this.
I don't think we have
agenda
that.
item.
I
Yeah.
think that was the point of
Yeah.
this.
And it
Yeah,
still
for us
hasn't
to
been
figure out whether we
decided
needed one.
if it's an employee or if it's a firm. That's what you folks needed to discuss.
Oh, okay,
Employee,
okay.
firm, and scope of work, and whether you even need it. So that's what this agenda item is. It hasn't been developed yet.
Just to clarify.
Yeah. Now, I would say that, having an employee that part of their job is to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. The person that we might hire, one of their job duties might be to interface with Joey, for example, and help Cindy to do that. That we could probably easily put that into a ad hoc duties as required kind of thing, is that interface, but actual
Agreed. That could be done.
yeah, the actual PR work that might be done would we could put that scope, because I don't think it's going to be that significant.
Exactly.
I can't see it being $110,000. Now I could see, if it starts getting out of hand, then we have to re-talk about it, right? About whether, in the end, the money comes out of the same big giant bucket. So whether there needs to be some refactoring, right? But at this point, we don't believe that it's going to impact significantly the contract with Pang. And until it does, and until we start really trying to flesh it out and start using it more, if we actually want to use it, then there's that. But I don't disagree that Cindy's probably a little bit, there was a lot of catch up. And then see, this is what happens when you leave your job. You got to catch up. That'll teach you. Yeah. I don't think we have anything like that. This is what this was supposed to talk about and to try to flesh out. And I think we're kind of it's squashy, right? It's squishy because we don't really have a requirement for that. And that's saying something unto itself, right? If you don't really have a requirement for it, whereas we have a requirement to be the policy-making body, and then maybe to convey those policies, then we can see if we like using Pang. If you need something slightly different, then we can see if Pang has those offerings as well. So, yeah, that's a long answer to no. We don't have a job description or anything. Is that correct, Cindy?
Yes, that's correct.
Chair, just to share a little bit about a communication specialist, and I've had a chance to work with one, and the work is extensive. They put out surveys and they want to put out a message, but they want to resonate with either three different groups that occupy our society, and they put out surveys and they determine which is the best way to deliver that message. And then you get into either they're going to be a social media specialist, that anytime someone turns on their phone, the message is going to pop up, or on the computers, or the newspapers, depend on what and where you want the message to be delivered. So it's a tall order, and I would like to see this organization that we have, and what type of services they offer. And if it's costing us $8,000 or $9,000 a month, I want to know what we're getting for it. So I would encourage, maybe a representative from the group give us a report every so often. Thank you.
So Chair, I'd like to recommend that we hold off on making any decisions about this. It's in the budget. I think the sentiment of the committee is that we don't see an urgent need to fill this position at the moment. And that in the meantime, we get a briefing from Pang Communications. I don't think there's any reason for us to be discussing this any further at this moment.
Okay. Can I get a copy of the Pang contract so I can take a look at the scope?
Yes.
And then we can pass that. I don't think maybe it's not the contract. Maybe we need a summary of the scope of what's with Pang and have Joey brief it to the committee. And then, if we want to look at the contract, then we can. I'll make that decision after we get there.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's put that on the agenda for next month. I'm looking for, I lost my screen. So let's table this for now. And it'll be pending a briefing from Pang. And then we can see if we can come up with a final recommendation on what we want to do. Okay, item number 7. Regarding the conversion of personal services contract employees to civil servants. Now, Laura, you mentioned a lot of things, and I think in the beginning of this meeting where there was a lot of flexibility you had with PSCs, and I get that. I think we have a lot of flexibility because we're HART, right? And we're kind of separate but equal. But I also think that there are some serious advantages to being able to have people feel like and not have this, 1 year thing hanging over their heads. You mentioned it a couple meetings ago in terms of, you let everyone know early this year that people's contracts were in the process of getting renewed and that there shouldn't be any issues this year. Right. I think that, it really does feel scary to people to just kind of go up every 10 months and just go, oh, is my stuff going to get renewed? And so we had talked about this previously, and I cannot, and I don't know if anybody else knows the history of it. I wish Colleen was here. Cindy, help us to fill this in, but I can't find anything. I cannot find a document, so I need help finding any documents somebody might have at heart to dig them out on how this PSC contract thing started.
Michelle, Sandy did do some research, so she has some history on why we are what we are.
Sandy, why don't you share with us what you found?
Okay, so this is what I learned. So back when the project began to be staffed, there were some civil service positions that needed to be filled, but we needed more staff to fill them, and we needed to get the positions staffed expeditiously. So at that point in time, it was decided that we switch to look at recruiting people on a personal services contract. It's quicker. We don't have to go through all the bureaucratic processes that the city does. So that's why we're on a personal services contract.
And
So you're saying we chose to do that?
It was decided.
Yeah, I think it was in concert with Department of Human Resources and Administration at the time. But the two big things that I caution is if we're going to go the civil service route, it's going to be much slower to recruit, and it's going to be pay-wise, it's going to be less. So there's some benefits to having the PSC. So if the number one thing is that, the employees are worried about their contract not getting renewed, that's why I tried to address it this year. And as Sandy is doing screening before she does the interviews with the managers, she's making it clear, we're just like at-will employees in the private sector. So we really need to vet the pros and cons of PSCs versus civil service.
Chair.
Yes.
Sorry if I missed this, but in the previous discussion, I know we were talking about additions or deletions to the staffing and how easier it is with the current setup with Hart. If we were to convert to civil service, would that impact our ability to add or delete positions as needed?
I think that would make it much more difficult because now you're going to have to involve the unions.
Okay. And just as a side comment,
Wait. So wait a minute. Can I ask a question about the unions? Because when we were talking about, I don't know, like the alternate work schedule, we said we had to talk to the unions anyways. So
we do, but when
you're
you're talking about
really
adding,
understand.
when you're talking about adding or deleting, especially positions with the unions, you're gonna have a real uphill battle to get rid of any of their positions. I mean, just to do the 410s, I was surprised at how long it took because I thought it was an already negotiated MOA between the city and HGEA, but it still took us 4 months to just do ours, and ours is using their template. So if that's just something that's already been negotiated, imagine something that has not been negotiated with the union. Civil servants is a big deal for them.
Yeah, and sorry, Chair, if I could just finish my comment. I think we also kind of need to keep in mind that I believe, and maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, the general intent of Hart was never to be a perpetual organization. So at some point, I think the original intent was that Hart would eventually dissolve. And so I'm not sure how this would impact that.
When I talked to Formby, the way that I described it was a lot of the positions, not every single one, but some positions could easily be absorbed into the city, which is already below its recruiting limits, right? So there are empty positions that these people can always be absorbed into. And it might be the best of both worlds kind of situation. It's not like converting everybody. It might be some positions might be more effective in a certain way. Some positions might not. Some positions we might want a lot more flexibility in that because they're much more difficult to find. Some positions we might not be paying them that much more than civil service, and it might not be such a bad idea to like convert people over because then they're not going to like try to find another HR job like over in Rogers area, because they're going to get paid about the same. So I don't know. This is what this discussion is.
Yeah. Absorbing is not an easy word. You're talking about a full reorg between you're moving positions from one city department to another. I mean, just doing an E&V, doing an reorg within ENV, minimum 10 years. So by using the word absorb, it's not easily that we're going to transfer 20 positions from HART to DTS. That's a 10-year process, unless things have changed since I left ENV. And again, you're involving the unions. And also, to convert PSC to civil servant, that's not a given that the incumbent gets that position. You are to advertise for that position, and the incumbent can apply along with everyone else in the public and compete for that position.
And if I could, add to that, and Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I don't know if we would want to necessarily tie the hands of DTS or the city to have to absorb specific individuals. I think we want to make it as flexible as possible for the city to recruit some of these people if as they see fit or as they see needed, and maintain the nimbleness of HART to be able to act a little quicker than through a more bureaucratic process.
Let me respond a little bit to that too. In 1992, through charter, the Honolulu Public Transit Authority was established, and that was an authority that ran buses but not rail. Rail continued as an executive function within the Department of Transportation Services. When that happened, there was a charter directed transfer of employees from one entity to the other en masse. In 1996, that entity was dissolved by the voters in another charter amendment, and there was an orderly transfer, according to the charter, back to DTS as a result of the dissolvement of the Honolulu Transit Authority. When HART was established, I think in 2012 or thereabouts, there was again some orderly transfer, or the mayor was given authority to transfer positions from DTS, which had a rail transit division at that point, to HART, and that was left for the charter gave the mayor the authority to determine which employees and who would transfer. So but short of those types of of charter type changes, it is not easy to transfer these employees, because what you're up against is adhering to civil service rules that were not really formed for this type of transfer. The civil service rules emphasize meritocracy and fair employment and competition. And so there isn't an option for a fiat or a unilateral transfer of people short of them Now, the only exception is when, that there's a charter amendment or there's a reorganization, as Lori said, by either the mayor or through charter. Mayor has some authority to do reorganizations, but in my experience, we've just created a ocean safety division, for example, and that was through a executive thing within the city charter. I think there's also going to be a charter amendment that will further define whatever that looks like, but these are unusual circumstances, and when they do happen, they're normally by ordinance or by charter change.
Well, I would think that the shutting down of HART would be something extraordinary, right?
Yeah, and it would probably be a charter change. I mean, if that
Right.
were to occur, that's what would probably happen. And at that point, then there could be a wholesale shift around, but that would be something that would be empowered by if there was a charter amendment. And Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what my understanding of how the processes would work. In terms of mass changing of people from contract to that. That's not part of civil service. There is no blanket way that you can do that, short of having, following the process that's there, which is that those employees compete for positions unless there is some type of ordinance or charter change.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I know that creating new civil service positions is very complicated.
Yeah.
Chair, can I just ask,
Yes.
Laurie, what the sentiment is from the people who work for you? Do any of them express a desire to become civil service employees? And the corollary to that is, do you think it would be easier or more difficult to hire new people if it was as a civil service rather than a contract employee?
Yes. So as I'm having the one-on-ones with the different employees, this is a concern for them that, I don't know. It's around the March, April timeframe. Is my contract going to get renewed? So I'm trying to nip that in the bud that come January, yes, all your contracts will be renewed. The hesitancy or why I'm pushing back is we have so much flexibility now that what we're talking about with that career fair, they won't be able to, civil servants guys will not be able to do what we're able to do and give that offer letter right then and there. And then within a few weeks, hopefully everything passes and they come on board. Like I mentioned about the salaries, we do have that leeway to go a little bit higher as long as we're in that range and we can prove that they have the experience. I can push them up. They can't do that. Civil servants can't do that. So, and the people coming off from the street, as long as it's made clear to them, the word contract is very uncomfortable to anybody, especially if they're coming from the mainland. If I'm just going to be a contract employee, but when you explain, you're just like everyone else, you're an at-will employee, and the contracts are renewed every year. We have people who've been at Hart 14 plus years on these PSCs. So that's why I'm hesitant to convert to civil servant.
And those people are okay with that? They haven't expressed an interest in becoming civil servants? Okay.
See, the reason why I've been pushing on this is because a large number of employees, count on more than two hands, expressed to me that there was a desire for them to do that. Now, maybe they didn't know they can get paid less, right? And maybe getting paid less and getting some retentive bonuses or more union support or something else is in people's interests, right? But when there used to be a whole bunch of people sitting in the back of the room and there aren't now, I saw a lot of heads nodding. And then people came up to me after the meeting and told me, yes, I want that. Okay. Now, I understand completely that there's a lot more flexibility in terms of hiring and salaries and a lot of other things. But, I think that there's also this implied challenge with at-will employees of, what they hear about how easily I can just be fired, right? It's like, I don't need you anymore. Okay, bye-bye, right? That's it. It's like, if I could get rid of a position and then they're just gone. And so that's the challenge, right? They're not really, they're getting paid like a government person. They're not getting paid like a consultant, and they're not having the benefit of some of those other government protections. So, I think maybe we need to, let's just keep talking about it, but maybe what we need to do is just put out an anonymous survey and just hear what people have to say. Like I said, maybe it's the best of both worlds. Maybe some things might be more conducive to doing that. And that those are the kinds of people that could easily compete for positions other places in the city. And we can afford them an opportunity to do that kind of at their leisure, not like, oh, I joined Hart just so I can start to become a city worker, get the feel for things, get my city number in and just jump across with my leave and everything, right? Because some things do transfer. It's not like you don't have anything. You get your pension, your whatever, your 401k transfers, your vacation transfers. I don't know if your employee number transfers, but some of these other things actually do go across with you. But I mean, it might be something like that. That some positions might lend themselves to that. There might just be a few of them. There might not be any. There might be some. And just because you want something doesn't mean you get it either, right? But I actually heard from a lot of employees saying that this was a big deal to them, that and it was not that they wanted to be a city employee, it's that they didn't want somebody to always be like, well, I could just fire you.
Yeah.
And it was that specific comment, I could just fire you.
I don't think myself or any of my managers say that to any of our employees. And I think if you look at the history, we've renewed all of our contracts. There's only a handful of employees that were asked to leave, and there's very specific reasons why. But I'll be very disappointed if any of my managers are saying that to any of our employees, that I can just fire you. I highly doubt that's what's being said. I would like to know if that is being said, and who's saying it, and to who.
Yeah, Chair.
Nothing. I was going to say something that was probably not very appropriate. Go ahead.
So I think part of it is the 1 year term, and that's kind of a short term. I mean, to me, it would be better if there was a 3, 4, or 5 year type of option. The reason we probably have a 1 year term is probably based on civil service rules, because the union, as a generality, the union doesn't like contract employees. They want people to be permanent civil service employees, and so they have it. We may be caught up in this case, maybe they don't really care, but they have the rule, and we abide by the rule, which says the maximum contract length can be 1 year, and I believe that's rooted in civil service agreements that we have. I don't know if it's part of ROH or whether it's just union agreements, but that's the root of this 1 year issue. And really, I think we'd all agree that 1 year is a very minimum term for this type, and we'd all be better. So perhaps, I don't know whether there's any where the rule comes from, whether it comes from a formal civil service rule or a formal union agreement or that, but that may be the best place to look.
I would definitely be open to that, but
Yeah.
and it can't just be Hart though, right? Because other city departments do PSCs as well.
Yeah, but it could. I mean, Hart's sort of special, though. It's a a semi-autonomous instrumentality. So the Board of Water Supply operates with quite a bit of freedom that is not the same as what other city departments do. And you're somewhat in the same boat. So you may be right, but I'm just not sure that I would say that's an absolute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Laurie, I have another question. So, and this goes to Sandy too. If an employee were to come to you and say, "Hey, I'd actually like to switch over to being civil service," what's the standard response at the moment? Is it we can't do that, or
We can't do that. So there's no civil service position that they could go into. So it would be something like, let's say, at another city department, that there is a civil service position equal to what they do, but you would still have to compete. They would have to open up that position to apply and compete. But Hart does not have. We have a handful of civil service positions, like the secretaries, the private secretaries.
Thanks.
Good discussion.
I think it is a good discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's old news, maybe it's several years old challenges that maybe we've kind of started to work through. I do think that there is a lot of uncertainty that you can hopefully start at least telling the employees that their contracts are going to be renewed earlier, and that could probably help. And I like Roger's idea. Sandy, if you could just ask whether we might be able to extend the personal services contracts to 18 or 24 months, that would probably be something that we could at least ask.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I mean, it seems like that seems like kind of a good middle ground, you know, where, you know, you might have somebody on a 12-month contract to start off with. I mean, they're always at will when you're a PSC. So, you know, having a longer contract makes them feel better, but that doesn't really, you can still make changes if you need to as a manager, and you don't have that, the really challenging thing of, well, you know, I have to delete a position and then I have to go through that whole thing with, you know, civil service, and then I have to put something back and then everything else. And the board wouldn't have all that flexibility as well.
Yeah, I like that middle ground, Michelle. So Sandy will check with DHR, but this might be bigger than just a DHR, but I'm willing to fight that fight because that's worth it.
It might be. And, you know, like I said, the mayor and the managing director are willing to help us in areas where we understand what help we want. Right. So, so let's follow up on that and check back in a couple months on that one.
Yes, we'll do. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? No?
Did you call for public testimony?
I think I did in the beginning. Do we have anything else? Do we have any public testimony, Cindy, at the end?
No one here from the public.
Okay, well, if anybody from Hart wants to anonymously submit public testimony on whether they want to be a PSC or whether they want to be a civil service person, but it does sound like that the civil service thing, if you listen to the conversation, there are challenges with that. And we know that there's challenges. There's benefits too. So anyway, okay, great. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.